This is a teardown of a new survey. I'm really trying to push this like intro song theme here. I feel like it needs one, you know? It needs something like catchy that's now an obnoxious song that maybe you won't be able to get out of your head, which I kind of apologize but also don't. But I feel like this project needs something. This 50 surveys project, 50 survey teardowns in 50 days. And today's, I think, is like survey 15, 16, something like that. We're going strong. And today's is a post-purchase survey. You can see on my screen that I'm wiggling here. I was going to highlight this where it says today it is Enquire post-purchase survey, but I tried highlighting it a couple seconds ago when I was recording, and then I couldn't unhighlight it. See, I'm going to show you. But now I'm like prepared. Okay, so I don't know how to unhighlight that. It's just not happening. Anyway, we're going to do a post-purchase survey teardown. And before we hop over, I'm going to show you. So this is an app, for a Shopify app. And it is a plugin that lets you have a post-purchase survey. So immediately after you order. And it says here, basically displays the survey just after the purchase completion for your clients to fill out. In our case, we ask, how did you discover Brava? So this is, this guy works at Brava, and they're using this particular app. And they're currently in the 50% completion rate, giving us a lot of feedback on acquisition channel and attribution. So I want to actually click over to this link. So this is the app that he's talking about, right? This is the Shopify app. So Enquire post-purchase survey. So let's take a look at it. I want to show you something. So essentially, it's this. You complete an order, and once you've downloaded this app, it lets you populate right here this question, this single survey. And we've talked about this a bunch, how the power of a survey goes up exponentially when you can tag it or piggyback it onto an existing event. So the survey doesn't necessarily have to be, if possible, a standalone event. It's just catching someone right when they're in the middle of a particular action. Now, so you kind of make it like part of the order is completing the survey. So that explains the extremely high completion rate. So normally a survey response rate is somewhere between 10 and 20%. You can expect that when you're sending it to externally. So internally, if you're sending it to like employees, for example, of course, a much higher response rate. But externally, around 10 and 20% is fairly expected. So these guys are getting a 50% completion rate, which isn't a surprise because this is like right in front of you as soon as you hit order. You're waiting for that order completion confirmation page, and then you get a question like this, right? So it's very easy because it's right there to participate. This is their default question. Now I want to dig in tomorrow into other options for questions that you have here, but what I really want to highlight is this is their default, and this is something that shouldn't necessarily, this isn't a question everyone should ask. And I don't mean that in the, what I mean by that is you want to ask questions that are useful. You always want to ask questions that are useful. We've talked about a lot of stuff in the past few teardowns. And a really prominent theme when it comes to surveys is only ask if you have to, right? You really want to respect the boundary here between the customer and you, and that you're not going to just like inundate them with questions and asking for information you don't actually have a need or a use for. You want to be really, really deliberate with the data that you're collecting, because at a certain point, if you're collecting too much data, they're going to run into survey fatigue. So you really want to buffer that by being deliberate and intentional with your questions, which means you need a goal. So a question like this is great. It's only useful if you actually want the answer. So what would be the scenario? So the scenario here is you want to know where are most of your folks coming in. Based on their acquisition channels, maybe you want to market there more. Maybe you get confirmation that, oh, cool, I'm putting ads on Instagram and most people are actually coming through Instagram. So that's great. Or we've done some stuff on Facebook, I'm actually getting some responses, or an affiliate. So it's going to confirm and give you that like feedback loop. Now, the beauty is because of the positioning, because you're getting a 50% completion rate, you can have more trust in the answers, right? The higher completion rate, you have more ability to like assume that 50% of your folks is more representative than, of course, like 20% of your customers, right? So higher completion rate is really important in terms of accuracy and assuming that the data that you're collecting is in fact representative, that this small sample will speak to the whole. And that's why the positioning of the survey, the placement of it is really important. So this is perfect placement, and then you can trust, of course, the accuracy of your responses. But what I really want to, as a takeaway for today, is that ask questions that are useful. Is this useful? Are you trying a bunch of different acquisition channels? Are you wondering where folks are coming from so that you can double down on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever the case may be? If that's not true, if that's not helpful information for you, if there's no particular action that you can take from this question, don't ask it. It's not useful for you, and you need to kind of tailor down what in fact is useful. This is a popular question to ask, but unless you can react, right? So this is like ask questions that will point to a particular action that you should take. If you can't take action, some kind of action based on the data, the survey response data, don't ask it, or at least second guess. That's the main takeaway for today. We're going to double down tomorrow on like some other options for questions here. I want to, so if we go over here, we'll actually see a few examples. I'm going to highlight it here of some other questions that folks ask in this. So this looks like it's an app that lets you ask one, maybe two questions with some follow-ups, and then they've put in some other questions here that are alternatives. They've seen folks use these questions as well, but this was the one that we talked about today. This is what they have as their default. But I'm bringing this up because it's very common to have default survey questions, and they feel like a helpful starter, but really be critical. Like, is this going to help me? Is this useful information? Collecting data is only good if you're going to use it. If you're not going to use it, it's a waste of your time. It's a waste of your customer's time. So just be really, really deliberate and really clear here. There is this like feel good sentiment of like, oh, I have this particular insight, and maybe that's nice to have, but is it informing anything? And one thing I'll add to that is that it doesn't always have to inform something in like a big grand way, right? Maybe this is data that you actually just want to share with your team. Maybe it's a reference point. Maybe it's a good FYI. All of that's okay. It doesn't have to be something that's like informing a giant business changing action, right? Like maybe this is just good information that's useful to know, but take the time. Take that second and figure it out. What is the goal of the survey? What am I doing with this data? When you take the time to figure that out up front, it will save you from having to like just having a pile of data that you don't know what to do with after the fact. It might not feel like that's much when you have just a single question here, but you really want to get into the habit of being deliberate with your questions. And this will populate. This will translate over to just in general, like asking better questions. You're going to ask better questions of the data that you have once you collect it. So not just better questions about your audience so that you can ask better survey questions, but this funnels back into like, what is the business question? Or what is the marketing question? Or what is the product question? Like that you want to answer. And then you'll start looking for ways that your research questions can be answered in the data, and that will start driving it, as opposed to the way that a lot of folks do operate, a lot of businesses, and to no fault of their own, but a lot of it is like, okay, I need to collect data, right? I should have some insight. And then the matter of like what insight and what's useful kind of gets pushed to the wayside because there's just a bunch of templates available. So I will really encourage you to sharpen your surveying ear. Let's just go with that. You know what I mean, right? That's my main little survey rant for today. I hope that was helpful. If you have surveys, please tag me on Twitter. Bad surveys, good surveys, weird surveys, confusing surveys, any kind of survey you run into from a business, send them to me. My Twitter handle is in the description. It's Hannah_Shamji. And I will catch you back here tomorrow. Bye, guys.